Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.
Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. Glad you joined us today. Today we're going to have a great show. We're going to talk about feed mixing, and our guest will be Dr. Dan Loy. He's the director of the Iowa Beef Center, and he's a ruminant nutritionist. We're going to talk about what's on paper, what gets put in the mixer, what gets mixed up, and what gets delivered to the cattle. So stay tuned.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com.
At Farm Credit, we partner with America's farmers who work hard each and every day to grow the food that we all enjoy. It's not an easy task, but it's an important one. Farm Credit is proud to work with farmers and ranchers, lending support in rural America.
KFRM is one of the largest farm radio stations in the nation, dedicated to informing and entertaining rural listeners from northern Oklahoma to southwestern Nebraska. You can catch KFRM in many ways, of course, 550 on the AM dial, streaming at kfrm.com, or on your smartphone by going to the TuneIn Radio app, or on Ag AM in Kansas on Tuesdays and Facebook every day of the week. KFRM, tune us in. You'll be glad you did.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Dan Loy. We're both at Iowa State University, and we are being responsible.
We are.
We try hard. So we do think it's a good thing for everybody to wear a mask. This COVID situation has changed our world, but you know, if we all take responsibility, there's no reason why we can't get out and be face-to-face. It's a lot better than WebEx, isn't it?
It sure is. It's a lot better.
Dr. Loy is a ruminant nutritionist, and he is the director of the Iowa Beef Center. And he has spent a career working with feedlot cattle and feedlot producers and all different types of things. And one of the things that I really enjoy when I go to the Feedlot short course at the Iowa Beef Center is when y'all talk about feed mixing and how you measure the. So what are some of the reasons that, or the importance of having proper feed mixing when we look at feedlot diets and that?
Well, there's really 4 rations in a feedlot ration. There's the ration that the nutritionist formulates. There's the ration that gets placed into the feed mixer. There's the ration that comes out of the feed mixer. And then there's the ration that the animals eat. And all of those steps have some places where there can be some challenges. And evaluating feed mixing is basically looking at the effectiveness and the efficiency of going from step 2 to step 3.
You bet. And so I never really thought of it that way, but I think it's perfect. So we have those 4 different rations that we're mixing, not a 4-ration system, but 4 rations every day. And then obviously what we put in there, how it gets mixed and how it gets delivered is vitally important.
It's vitally important. And so, you know, we encourage producers to do some type of mixing evaluation routinely, and you know, often we have them do it on an annual basis, you know, looking at doing a mixer test, and you know, we can talk about the process that happens with that, but when you start doing a mixer test with all of the different analysis that you might want to do, sometimes that can get kind of expensive with all the nutrient analysis to do it on a very frequent basis.
Right. And so when we start to think about, you know, the different feed additives we use, different trace minerals, fat, everything, all the above, it's in everybody's best interest in the health of the cattle and the performance of the cattle that it's evenly distributed.
Oh, no question about that. You know, a lot of the nutritional problems that we have can be exacerbated by improper mixing and improper intake, or inefficient or variable intake by the cattle.
You bet. And so, folks, when you're looking at beta agonists, or you're looking at your rumensin or your Tylen or different things that are in your ration, if you don't have it evenly distributed, one of them's eating way too much and one of them's not getting any.
And one of the best examples is when you're feeding MGA to heifers and you start seeing cycling heifers. The first thing we look at is a mixing issue.
Perfect. Well, we've kind of set the stage. We're lucky to have Dr. Loy here. We're thankful for Iowa State letting us use this nice room. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, more from Iowa State. Hey folks, Dr. Dan here. Welcome to Cattle First, as sponsored by Boehringer Ingelheim Vet Medica. And the term today, biosecurity. Biosecurity is security. It's like having a bouncer that keeps pathogens out and keeps disease out of your herd. One of the best tools you can use for biosecurity is a proper vaccination program, and work with your veterinarian on that. The second one is introduction of new animals. And when we bring new animals on the farm, making sure that if there's a disease that is important that we test for, that we have that done prior to bringing them on the premise. And if they haven't been, then we have a place to quarantine them until we can get the diagnostics back, I think is vitally important. Talking to your neighbors as cattle lean across the fence and communicate with each other, making sure that you have a community-wide biosecurity plan and vaccination plan, vitally important. Keep the disease out, be the bouncer.
No one plans to get sick or injured, but when life happens, it's important you and your family are protected. Kansas Farm Bureau health plans are there to provide continued health care coverage to meet your needs. Choose from a broad range of individual and family plans. And if you're over 65, we have options for you too. Learn more at kfbhealthplans.com or contact a Farm Bureau Financial Services agent near you.
Highways 40, 83, and I-70 come together right here in Oakley. Roads that lead to businesses, to magnificent rock formations, to scenic vistas, to places where legends were made. Roads that lead us home. Discover Oakley, the gateway to western Kansas.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson and Dr. Dan Loy, and kind of the running joke at Iowa State right now, if your name's kind of got to be Dan.
That's right. Dan's the man.
Yeah, Dan Loy's director of the Beef Center. I'm the chair of animal science. Our dean of the College of Ag is Dan Robeson. The dean of the vet school is Dan Grooms. So I think they kind of overdid it on the Dan, but I'm glad they did, because I was the last one let on the bus. So,
yep.
But we're talking about mixing and sampling and how to make sure our mixing is adequate in these diets. So talk to me about how do you start out that conversation?
Sure. Well, the traditional mixer assessment is to take a series of samples. We usually take 10 samples starting at as you unload the mixer wagon from the beginning to the end, in kind of 10 uniformly spaced samples. And then traditionally what we do is then analyze those for the nutrients that the major feed ingredients differ in. So it might be protein for protein supplements, fiber for roughages, might be calcium for a mineral supplement, it might be a feed additive. You start adding up all those analysis times 10, it gets to be fairly expensive. But I still advocate doing that once a year or so, just to kind of see where you're at with your normal mixing. But what we've gone to that you can do more frequently that's less expensive, because if you do have a problem in mixing, more often than not, it's because of particle size differences. And so what you see a lot of times is that you have hay that's chopped a little long, and it all comes out at the end of the load, and you get the fine particles at the beginning of the load. And so what we've gone to doing is still doing the same way, taking those 10 samples, but then doing a particle size evaluation. And what we usually do is use the Penn State particle separator. A lot of people call them the shaker box.
Yep.
And we'll take those 10 samples and we'll go through the typical process that's recommended, shake it down, and then look at the percent of each sample that's in the top tray or the top 2 trays, depending on the particle size of the diet. And then the next step is to take those 10 samples and calculate a coefficient of variation. And a coefficient of variation, you can do it on any spreadsheet. It's the, I always get this wrong, standard deviation divided by the mean, right?
Yep.
Standard deviation divided by the mean, and we'd like to see that less than 10%. That's kind of a rule of thumb. And if you can, and that's harder or easier to do with, if we're looking at nutrients with different nutrients, but that's a good rule of thumb. You could target 5%, but if you're in 10%, you're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and so I think it's important when you're talking about separating out. So to visualize that, and we have a picture here on the screen of a Penn State shaker box, but there's different sieves.
Right.
That
right.
As you shake that, the bigger particle size stays in the top and the fines get to the bottom.
Exactly right. And depending on which trays you use, it can be different. When I say the top 2 trays, that is what we would call the effective fiber. So it's greater than 4 millimeters, and those 2 trays would be the fiber that would be effective roughage, and that's the other place that we use the shaker box typically too.
So in the end, your roughage to fines should be similar to about a 10% coefficient variation across the 10 samples that you take. When we come back, more with Dr. Loy on feed sampling.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
No one plans to get sick or injured. But when life happens, it's important you and your family are protected. Kansas Farm Bureau health plans are there to provide continued health care coverage to meet your needs. Choose from a broad range of individual and family plans. And if you're over 65, we have options for you too. Learn more at kfbhealthplans.com or contact a Farm Bureau Financial Services agent near you.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well in their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we're glad to answer and work with you.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
ValleyVet.com, ValleyVet.com, Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with Dr. Dan Loy. We're at Iowa State University where Dr. Loy serves as the director of the Iowa Beef Center, and we're talking about mix and feed for cattle, and obviously making sure that what we put in is getting mixed appropriately was covered. But now let's talk about making sure that what's formulated gets in the mixer to begin with.
Well, and that's a big step, and it's one that, you know, we kind of ignored and assumed for decades. You know, a nutritionist would formulate a diet, and the cattle feeder would put the closest they could into that as a feed wagon, and then write down the feed that was delivered, and that would go into the computer for our estimate of performance and break-evens and cost of gain and so forth. But now with some of the real-time software that's out there, they have the ability to interface with a scale head and look at each feed ingredient and how that gets weighed into the wagon or the mixer compared to the way that it was actually formulated, and can look at the error or the bias. Often it's bias. You know, one of the things we see when we feed something like wet distiller's grains is you get to where you want the weight that you want, and then that little extra goes in. So you get that extra bias, and so we can now measure that, account for that, and even score different operators on how well they do with that. So that technology's really helped us in getting from those two steps.
That's awesome. And so getting it into the mixer, getting it properly mixed, and then there's feed delivery, right?
And then there's feed delivery, and that's where the mixing efficiency comes in, and doing our coefficient of variation can really evaluate that. And if you have a problem with that step, then you start looking at things like mixing time. You may want to look at adding ration conditioners. You may want to look at mixing sequence. A lot of the things that we often cover in our Feedlot short courses are some of the things that you can evaluate there.
Yeah, and on your Feedlot short course, that runs in August, correct?
Yes, this year it's August 11th to 13th. In 2020 it's August 11th to 13th, and usually the first or second week of August. And
if people want to find out more about the Iowa State Feedlot short course, they can find it on the web at the Beef Center? Yeah, come to the iowabeefcenter.org, and there should be a link to the registration site for the short course. We do restrict it to 30 people, and we'll hold true to that this year, because we're going to really watch the social distancing and you know, take in all the precautions we can to keep our attendees safe. Yeah, well, I think it's vitally important. It's a great short course. I've been fortunate enough to participate in it since you started it, and Robbie Pritchard from South Dakota, and yourself, and people at the Iowa Beef Center, Erica Lundy and Grant Duell and Terry Engelken, and just it's a fun environment. So check it out on the email or on the internet. Let's take a break, and then when we come back, let's get a little bit more into kind of our final thoughts on making sure that we have the right ingredients, the right mix, and the right delivery to the right cattle.
Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people, just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
I'm Bob Swartz, and I've devoted the last 43 years to helping Kansans reach their retirement goals and to protect the family farm. At Bob Swartz Financial, we believe everyone should be able to live the retirement they've always dreamed of. Our team of professionals can help you create an efficient strategy using a variety of investment vehicles to help you address your financial needs and your concerns. Bob Swartz Financial values commitment and transparency.
Okay, looks like it's time for our tour. Welcome to the Fort Wallace Museum. Here at the museum, you're going to find some really interesting stuff like our replica stagecoach from the Butterfield Overland Dispatch. We've got facades from the fort buildings. We've got an 1870s flag. There's a plesiosaur that was discovered locally. We've got the Ray pump organ collection. We're a little bitty place with a great big story, and we'd love to have you.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with Dr. Dan Loy. We're at Iowa State University, where Dr. Loy serves as the director of the Iowa Beef Center. And if you haven't gone to their website, it's one of the best online tools for producers that I've ever seen. And Dr. Loy has, how long have you been at Iowa State?
38 years.
38 years. So it was right before I was born that, no, I'm just kidding. Dr. Loy has been a mentor of mine and has been a friend, and I'm very fortunate to be here and get to work with him on a day-to-day basis. But when we're talking about the you know, what we put in the bunk or what we want the cattle to consume, there are some things that go from the feed truck to the tongue, right?
Right. You know, that last step is you know, the cattle have the ability to sort some rations, and so there may be some cattle that consume more roughage, and when that happens, that leaves more grain for other cattle, and that can set the stage for some inconsistent feed intake. You know, pH changes in the rumen, which can lead to some of the health issues that you can run into in the feedlot. So kind of monitoring that final step, the sorting is and actually the you know, taking samples and doing some evaluation of particle size throughout the day as the cattle consume it, you can get some handle on the amount of sorting. But looking at you know, how uniform the consumption is and evaluating that's really important too.
Yeah, I always hated coming back through, you know, later in the day and I see big chunks of corn stalks or rocks. You know, rocks were not in many rations that I'm aware of, but you know, how we find all that stuff in our bunks, and that can be pretty key to maybe something isn't getting chopped correctly or.
Right, particle size, you know, with corn silage, you start seeing all the corn cobs left, you know, maybe you need to change your chopper settings. But it may be as simple as adding a liquid supplement or some moisture, high moisture feeds to kind of get the fine particles bound together. You know, there's a lot of strategies from a feed bunk management standpoint that you can do to when you do have a mixing issue or a sorting issue with in the feed bunk.
Yeah, it's amazing how they can sort.
Yeah.
You think they're dumb, they're not. Any last words on kind of mixer to cow that would be your key take home?
Well, you know, I think you need to think about all 4 steps. I guess the last thing I would say is that the nutritionists formulate on a dry matter basis we weigh and deliver feed as fed, so monitoring moisture is really important.
Yeah, especially when you get in the Northwest with that potato slurry and
yeah.
Some of our high moisture grains. But Dr. Dan, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming in. We have some people that don't come in but getting here and practicing safe, wear your mask, protect yourself, protect mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, your kids. We're all in this together, and we're going to get through this, and it's just fun to be in person and doing this again. Remember, always work with your local veterinarian, and if you want to know more about what we do at DocTalk, you can find us on the web at www.doctalktv.com. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson with Dr. Dan Loy, and we'll see you down the road.
DocTalk is brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals. Join Ag AM in Kansas, everyone, Monday through Friday mornings on local stations throughout the state of Kansas, and every day on your favorite social media. Monday kicks off with Dr. Dan Thomson on DocTalk, as he's joined by leading veterinarians and nutritionists in food animal production. They discuss current production challenges and tips on how to deal and prepare for those challenges. Tuesdays on Farm Factor, it is our friends here at KFRM Radio with interviews from top experts in agriculture. Wednesday, it is a little of Kansas history with Deb Goodrich on Around Kansas. Thursday, Britton Rucker brings us Ag Etc. This day is filled with agricultural research and ag happenings around the Midwest, including our new Young Leaders in Ag segment. We end the week with Authentic Ag and updates from your local checkoff programs. Make sure to check your local listings or like us on Facebook and Twitter at Ag AM in Kansas and on YouTube at Farming Unlimited TV so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
Welcome to the Western Kansas Wildlife Travel Center, right here in my hometown of Oakley, Kansas. We're the front door of Western Kansas, located on 3 main highways, I-70, US 83, and US 40. And all those roads lead to history, beautiful scenery, and adventure, no matter which direction you go. We now have an IHOP. That brand that you've trusted up and down the road in all your travels is staffed with local folks, real people, just like you and me, and we're waiting on you to join us. So for fun, adventure, fuel up, fuel your body, and let's have some fun.